Welcome to Morningstar. There is great love here.
Well, this is an honor and a joy.
For us as well.
And I suppose my primary intention in this moment is I really want to have an incredible leading edge conversation with you. And I know that that is already answered. What made me feel confident enough that I was going to get called in this moment was that in the last conversation you had, you spoke about, I caught a snippet of it, but it was about making old situations new.
Because all of the power is now. And if it's active in your vibration, it is new. Because you are uniquely new in every moment.
Right. And at least for myself, I can't speak for anyone else, but let me preface it this way. One of the things that you've been saying in a lot of conversations that I've been resonating with is how when desire and expectation align with one another or come together, it feels really good.
We like the word expectation because you have a desire and you have a belief, but sometimes your belief does not match your desire. The word expectation leans a little more in the direction of what I desire and what I expect or what I believe are moving in the same direction. It's possible to have negative expectations, but we like to think of expectation as a further evolved lining up with my desire.
What's really beautiful in my life right now is that I feel with situations that are old, meaning things that I have carried desire around for a very long time, that my expectations are now starting to become more
tangible.
Yes, and so I'm actually feeling good about them. So situations that say, let's get more specific. So I have a very large dream and desire to take my ability as a singer-songwriter.
Before you go further, we want to talk about this fully, but before you go further, there's some stuff around expectation, because you are always receiving or living what you expect. And that's what we meant by two ways of knowing what you're radiating. You can tell by your mood or by how it feels, or you can wait till it gets there. Well, if you wait until it has arrived, if you're not keen to how your vibration mix feels, so you're not tending to it, then you may very well be attracting something that you don't want. But when it gets there, something that you often say or feel is, well, that's about what I expected, because what you think and what you believe is what comes. And so the important conversation about expectation is that awareness of an association, conscious association between how I've been feeling and what's showing up is a really good thing for you to know. Because when you accept that I get what I think about whether I want it or not, more important, I get what I believe whether I want it or not, I get what I expect whether I want it or not, then you can start getting out ahead of it. You don't have to wait till it gets there, because once it gets there, it's harder to expect around it, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. Well, I suppose to a certain point with situations that are older, that we've carried desire with for a long time, we've already built a reality that's very easy to observe.
You're talking about something so important, because you're talking about the continuum between what was and what is and what's becoming, and everything that you've lived is somewhat active in your vibration, and what's happening now is active in your vibration. It's not an easy thing to be witnessing something and feeling something differently than what you feel when you witness it. But what we're wanting to point out here is that the more in easy, soothed times you get out ahead of it by resonating with who you really are, then the more apparent offness will be whenever you approach it. That's how you get out ahead of it. So the more you care about how you feel, then the easier it is for you to deliberately and consciously affect the inevitable blend of past, present, and what you want to call future. The blend. Let's approach it from a different way. This is a really good conversation. Let's say that you're rendezvousing with some friends around a dinner table, and you didn't put the mix together. You were invited and you're going. but you're aware from past experiences that there's likely to be quite a bit of diversity in attitudes and opinions and lifestyles or whatever. And so what we want you to focus upon is, we're speaking from your perspective, what am I bringing to this table? Because what anybody else is bringing, you can't control. You could have knee-jerk reactions to it, but you can't control it. But what you can control is what you bring to the table. So what we are suggesting is that you get out ahead of it before you show up by making sure that you've rendezvoused with your inner being. Segment and tend even. Make sure that you're tuned in, tapped in, turned on. Because when you're tuned in, tapped in, and turned on, you're not pushing against any diversity. You're not pushing against anything. You're just in alignment with what you're in alignment with. And so now the diversity around this table is not going to threaten you. It's going to be the stuff from which wonderful new conversations and evolution is going to come. So now it really doesn't matter to you what the mix is, because you've gotten out ahead of it and you've taken care of what really matters. You're connected to who you really are, and whatever happens is going to be beneficial to you and therefore beneficial to the whole. You see what we're getting at?
Yes.
Now you got a picture of that vibrational mix that is showing up at the table. Yes. There are different political persuasions, maybe different religions. Some of them don't eat meat. They're different in lots of different ways that you have no control over, but you do have control over your alignment, your connectivity, your ability to uplift. Now you've got that picture of the group at the table. Now we want you to just address the group that is just you. In other words, just you. All the thoughts you've ever thought, all the life you've ever lived, the way you were raised, the way your mother was raised, the way her mother was raised, the beliefs that they had that they told you, and the expectations that you achieved because they had those expectations, the unwillingness to move into the now because they wanted to keep regurgitating the past. And so how much of your past and their past and their past is active in your now that does not mesh with what you now want? Isn't that interesting? You are a mess. You are a mixed bag of vibrations. In other words, when you show up anywhere, there is a whole lot of who you were, and within who you were is a whole lot of who those who influenced you were. In other words, we're talking about this continuum of vibration. And now what we want to say to you is that none of that matters very much if you are alive and connected and active in your now. Because since you got into this physical body, you have been creating a vibrational reality, and that vibrational reality, we call it the vortex, wrote 2 books about it. We want so much for you to accept it as this real thing that it is. All you have to tend to is the relationship between you and your vortex. You don't have to factor in everything that you've ever thought or everything that anybody else has ever thought. You just have this relationship between you and you. And it is so much easier to feel your way into the clarity of all of that. Yesterday, Esther has a new house in San Antonio, and it's beautiful and all that. But shortly after she moved in, she could smell like wet plaster in the house. So she spent quite a bit of time just sniffing around. But it's a big house, and what's she going to do? Go up in the attic and sniff around? She knew she had a water leak, but she didn't know where it was. And then one day in the laundry room, she looked up and ta-da, there was evidence of it. So the builder came back, tore out the ceiling, found the leak, repaired it, put it back good as new. And Esther is thinking, I really like how that works. And then not too long after that, she can smell the plaster again, but there's no evidence of it anywhere. And so Esther thought, well, there's no point in worrying about this until the evidence is big enough, because my sniffers are not, in other words, it wasn't exactly like finding negative emotion that could lead her to a problem. She had a water leak somewhere that was going to eventually get big enough that she was going to find it. And one day she went into one of her guest bathrooms, and this wonderful, beautiful piece of granite had popped right out away from the wall. And she looked, and that wall was wet. Ta-da! So the very nice men came, removed her glorious mirrors, and took out her magnificent light fixture and tore out the whole wall, but not the cabinet, and found a leak. Yay, it's so fun to find the problem that is the culprit. Patched it up, came back, sealed up the whole wall, painted it, put the mirror back. It's like it never happened. Then Esther goes away for a while, and when she comes back, no evidence of it anywhere. Then one day, yesterday, she sees a little black drip under the mirror. Aha! So nice to put my finger right on evidence of the problem. And so they came back, tore the wall out again, and no evidence of the leak, no evidence. And so they're saying it was just residual from before. And Esther is saying, so it was so wet, and rather than letting it dry out, you just sealed it up. Well, Esther's certain that that's not true. Esther's certain that there is new introduction of water in that wall. So now she's having a knee-jerk reaction to this. She can think of all kinds of things that are wrong with this scenario. First of all, duh, the plumber should plumb. Next of all, when you find a problem, make sure you've solved the problem before you put it all back together. What we're getting at with this scenario is that if there's something out of whack, it will show itself to you. And how you feel about it is optional. So there was a continuum that happened. That house was a spec home. The plumbing was all done before Esther even discovered the house. The plaster was all there. In other words, that was something that happened in, as far as she knows, a whole other lifetime. And so she doesn't feel responsible for it, even though the potential for it was there. But it doesn't matter. This is the thing that we're wanting to say. It doesn't matter whose fault it was that there is faulty plumbing in this house. It doesn't even matter how much of it is there. All that matters is Esther's relationship with her own inner being now. But it doesn't feel like that, does it? It feels like somebody needs to feel bad about what they've done to Esther. Somebody needs to take responsibility for their shoddiness. 3 times shoddiness. They messed it up the first time. They didn't fix it the second time. They plastered up the wall the third time. And here she is again. She is so right. Let's take a vote. Don't you think she's right? Of course she's right. Of course she's right. But that is irrelevant. It doesn't matter that she's right. The only thing that matters is if she is going to let this affect her relationship with what she wants, because everywhere she's going is over here. She gets to decide how much of that she keeps active, which only messes up her vibration in relationship to her movement in that direction. You see what we're getting at? Your life is full of relationships, past, present. There are all kinds of things that you have good reason to be active about or to be having responses to. But if you can just accept that there's only one thing that you are wanting to tend to, everything that you live causes you to put a rocket over here and improvement to take place, and the only thing that feels good is moving in the direction of your improvement. Once you understand that, then everything takes care of itself. So I want to just add one statement, and then we want to hear from you. You may not remember, you may remember. We're going to say it to you again so you will remember. One of the first things we said to you today is we are thrilled with the idea of you leaving this room really knowing the incredible power of non-resistant thought. Oh, a thought that you don't shoot yourself in the foot over. A thought that has no contradiction within you is a powerful thought. But now we want to change the word powerful to the pleasure, the incredible pleasure of non-resistant thought. Because when we guide you to the power of non-resistant thought, then if you're like most humans, you'll do the work to get hooked up, and then you'll use that awesome power to fix problems. And when you use that awesome power to fix problems, you introduce resistance into your equation, and now you don't have the incredible experience of non-resistant thought. You see what we're getting at?